Let me open tonight's joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. Thursday, October 22nd. It's about 6:32. Present is Gene Canty, Josh Antrim, and Mark Cullinan. Okay. Let's start meeting opening. Coronavirus update by Health Nurse Deb Murphy and Health Officer John Coolin. It's all yours, Deb.
John's going to be a little bit late. He just sent me a text, but Deb, you can take it from here.
You muted, Deb.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So the coronavirus update. So today, Massachusetts had 986 new cases, which, as you probably know, is one of the highest number that we've had since we started tracking the cases, with an additional 30 deaths today.
30?
So
Not in Nahant.
No, that's the state of Massachusetts. So today, DPH has changed its weekly reporting from Wednesdays to Thursdays. So today we had the updated report for weekly numbers in the communities, and the numbers that were posted today, I just want to let people know it's the last 2 weeks. So it covers the dates from October 4th to October 17th. And I have been keeping track of 6 communities: Chelsea, Lynn, Marblehead, Nahant, Revere, and Swampscott, because those are our communities and our abutting communities. Today's numbers show that 4 out of 6 of those communities have now entered the red. Chelsea, Lynn, Revere, and today Swampscott entered into the red zone. So what that means is the numbers are going up. Now, because we have so much more testing available, we expect to see the numbers go up a little bit, because many people now that are testing positive really don't have any symptoms. So, you know, that we're offering these free testing sites, and they're just, you know, going to get tested, which is great. And then very surprised to find out that indeed they've tested positive because they don't have any symptoms. Unfortunately, when that's the case, when they're asymptomatic, they're still infectious. So the people that they're coming in contact with can certainly still contact the virus. In Nahant, for our numbers, which we posted today, it showed that we had a total of 51 cases. We reported in less than 5 over the last 2 weeks. We're still in the gray area. The thing about Nahant is, gray is the best area, but for us to go from gray through green, yellow to red, we only need to have 5 cases in that 2-week period. So that's not, you know, impossible. And in fact, I would say that the way things are going right now, it's possible. That doesn't mean when we go into the red that we would make any quick changes with our schools, because new guidance came out today that said when communities do go into the red, the discussion has to be, are any of these cases actually being transmitted in school? In our particular case right now in the town, as people probably know, we have one case in preschool, but certainly a very contained case, no close contacts identified, and you know, quarantine and isolation measures in perfect place. And I expect that case to be recovered at the beginning of next week. The other thing that's important to note, I think, is that Also, you probably heard DPH and DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, changed the guidance for identifying close contacts. So we've been following the guidance that a close contact is anybody that comes in contact with a positive case within 6 feet for a period of 15 minutes. So what the new guidance says is that still holds true, but the 15 minutes can be cumulative over a 24-hour period. So that doesn't, so before it had to be, say if I was in Tony's office and I sat there for 15 minutes, closer than 6 feet, and he tested positive, I would be a contact. But now what it means is if somebody comes in contact with a positive case, it could be, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes 2 hours from now, and 5 minutes 3 hours from now, but within a 24-hour period, did I reach that 15 minutes? So, the guidance seems to change almost weekly. We all, we have our meetings, we keep up current with the latest. And, when you look around, of course, right now, you see that the numbers everywhere in our state are going in the wrong direction, actually. As small as we are, and I think everybody here is doing a great job. The school is doing a phenomenal job. The Jesmond is following their testing, and tonight their report was 100% in compliance, so they're in great shape. They haven't had any more positive cases since they had their outbreak. But I think, a little word of caution here is that don't let your guard down. And I really think, the masks now are really our best defense, especially when we don't know, like I said, if people are positive and have no symptoms. So they're unwillingly spreading it as well.
Debbie, do we have any kind of a tracking as to how many Nahantas have gone to Swampscott for the free testing?
Right. So I can tell you that in the last so the total number of Nahant residents who have been tested so far is 2,021, which is pretty good considering, we have 3,200 people.
Yeah, that's really good.
In the last 2 weeks, in this time period, we had 290 residents tested. And out of that, 3 tested positive. But just to give you an idea, in the last 2 weeks, Lynn had 7,399 residents tested, and they had 315 that tested positive. But I think, for a town our size, I think people are taking advantage of the free testing for a lot of different reasons. If people are going to travel or planning on visiting, relatives, grandparents, or whatever, I think they just want to, get that checked before they do that.
Now, if somebody tests positive, how does the contact tracing work? Who does that?
I do.
Just let our stand.
You do.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's a handful.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
So what I try to do first is identify if the person who's tested positive knows where that exposure came from, because that's important to know, especially now that we're, keeping an eye on the school. So, it's very interesting to note, none of the cases that we have right now, none of the exposures originated in Nahant. So, yeah.
Deb, we have a question from Michelle Capano. The question is, do we know of the COVID-19 free testing if residents have had their tests completed more than once?
Yes. So, so when we see the test numbers, generally speaking, for everybody, but for the state or for the town, many people have been tested several times. It's not uncommon to see that anymore. You know, when we first started doing the testing, we were just looking to see the test results. Now, when I get a test result, I can see that maybe 3 times prior somebody has tested negative, and now they test positive. It depends also on where the testing is done. A lot of the the rapid testing sites, such as maybe the pediatrician's office or the AFC in Swampscott, I will only get those results if they're positive. But if you go to like Lynn Community Health Center or many of the other sites that have been doing them for testing for a while, I will also get the negative results. So I can see how many people are being tested, and I can also see, you know, in their prior history they've been negative, but now they're converting to positive.
Tony, have we looked into what it would cost Nahant to do the testing here?
Yeah, so I was just going to follow up on Michelle's question and your question earlier, Gene. The testing that's being done in Swampscott, any test administered to a Nahant resident or a Nahant employee, we are paying for, and it runs about $70 a test. So I will know how many tests we paid for once at the end of the month. And I don't know if we were to host a testing site here in Nahant through Cataldo, like it's being done in Swampscott, if it would be at the same rate. Ideally it would be. So we'll see. Now, again, that $70 per test is funded through our CARES Act money, which we eventually will pay. We may have to pay 25% of. Some of it we won't have to pay any. I think the testing may be completely funded through the CARES money, and only and we may not need to pay a percentage of that at all. So, but when it comes to CARES money, the town in Nahant has received or been awarded around $300,000, and we've probably spent low 200,000 so far. So we're in that final 100,000, and it goes to all sorts of costs. A lot of costs related to town meeting, a lot of Deb and John Coulon's time, a lot of things like counts on aging, basically any type of activity that we've had to spend money on in order to adapt to the public health emergency, we can charge to either FEMA, which we owe 25% on, or CARES Act. So I'll know more how many residents or employees took advantage of the free testing in Swampscott, because we'll have to pay for that tab. But the other thing is Lynn is because they're in the red. Deb, is that where you just said that Swampscott is now in the red?
Right.
Does that? Because my understanding was because Lynn was in the red,
right,
anybody from a surrounding community could go there and get tested for free.
But you can go anywhere to be tested. Several of our Nahant residents have told me that over by Market Basket in Lynn, behind the fire station, there's another tent that was put up. And people are going there because it's quick, it's in and out. So you don't have to go to Swampscott. You can go to Lynn Community Health Center. There's so many places now that have just the drive-through tests available. And the other thing, Gene, the reason I don't know where they're being tested is when I get the test results, I only see the lab that resulted it. So I can see if they were resulted Quest, the Broad Institute, but not, unless they're in the hospital, unless they're a patient in one of the hospitals. I can't really say where they're being tested.
Understood. Hey, Tony, if we use up that funding, the CARES Act, can you go back at them for more?
I think, yeah, I think that's up to the state, but I believe, I'm sure that if we start getting into a second round of this pandemic, I think that they will provide additional funding for that.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you, Debbie. Is John come on, Tony?
Tony, I also have information that Swampscott, because they turned red today, they've ordered a third day of testing at the site at the church. I don't have the details yet of the day, but they're going to have additional testing available, and that would be.
I had a missed call from Chief Archer right before I jumped on this, so he must have been calling to let me know. They've been great over there. Chief Archer is awesome. He's been so helpful, and I encourage residents to take advantage of it. John hasn't joined, so we could probably just move on to the next thing.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Halloween activities and guidance. I know that Tony, you had written some guidance that you'd like me to read on behalf of the Board of Health. When this was written, we had three new cases, but now we have 5. So it could change our thinking. But let me read through it, and then we can have a discussion around it afterwards. Nahant has thankfully experienced a low COVID-19 case numbers, most likely due to diligence of our residents protecting themselves and others by following social distance guidelines. In the recent weeks, Nahant has had 5 new positive cases, and Massachusetts numbers are on the rise. We believe that our residents and our families participating in Halloween's tradition of trick-or-treating will take this into consideration and follow the proper guidance to limit the transmission of COVID-19. We encourage residents who plan to participate in this year's Halloween to utilize the free COVID-19 testing that is available at Swampscott at the First Congressional Church at 49 Monument Avenue on Wednesdays from 2:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you are feeling ill or test positive for COVID-19, please do not participate in Halloween activities. Homeowners can signal participation by utilizing their outside lighting, and trick-or-treaters should not approach a home if the outside lights are off. Wearing a proper mask during trick-or-treating activity is highly encouraged, and consider offering treats by placing them outside as a grab-and-go trick-or-treater, or by offering them on a platter instead of a bowl. Trick-or-treaters should participate, should practice good hand hygiene by using hand sanitizers often, especially after coming into contact with frequently touched surfaces. More guidance regarding Halloween participation can be found at mass.gov or by clicking on the following, www.mass.gov news Halloween during COVID-19. So, things have changed a little, Deb and Tony, since this was written. So do you want to follow up on that at all?
Yeah. Essentially, because numbers are on the rise, especially this year, where it's been such a difficult time, for families, for kids, for everybody, the last thing we want to do is, say that you can't participate in the holiday. Plus, obviously, enforcing something like that would be basically impossible. So, we really want to just encourage residents, whether you're a homeowner handing out candy or you're a parent of a child or children that are going to go trick or treating, to take it seriously and, do the right thing. I mean, it's fairly common sense, and similar to all the guidelines that we've been following for months now. When we looked at this, we felt like, trick-or-treating, traditional trick-or-treating of being outside and going door to door is more safe than having, 10 or 20 kids in a house for a Halloween party or a haunted house activity or things of that nature. You're outside, you're walking, you're not spending a lot of time in close contact with people that you're going up to the door to. So there's, there is anything that kind of comes across our desk, right? We always look at it like we can pretty much accomplish anything in this pandemic as long as we follow the right guidelines. So, it's really up to the parents and the homeowners, but we would encourage, parents to go trick-or-treating with their kids so that, kids from multiple households aren't getting together and trick-or-treating in large groups. You should really stick to your house, to the group of your household. Keep in mind that costume masks are not safe like a COVID-19, protective mask. You should also bring hand sanitizer with you. So the kids are sanitizing in between houses. You should wash your hands at the end of the night before you dig into the candy that you've collected. If you're handing candy out, the whole idea of putting it on a platter instead of a bowl, obviously, is so that, people aren't all grabbing into the same bowl. You want to limit those high contact surface areas. So putting them on a handing candy out on a platter, or another thing that we've heard a lot about is like, prepackaged candy bags or something, and putting them out on your front step or front walkway or something like that. We also encourage people to take advantage of that free testing, and, prior to the holiday. So that would be either Saturday or Wednesday or whatever the third date ends up being. And for those for the residents in town that, feel uncomfortable with it, just turn your outside lights off, and trick-or-treaters should, really respect that and not knock or ring the doorbell of a house that is not lit up. Again, over the past couple of days or weeks now, our numbers are starting to rise. So it's important that people, consider those guidelines if they want to participate in the holiday.
I know, Tony, that, now that I run a pup daycare center, I spend a lot of time at the playgrounds, and I talk to a lot of the parents, and I know that a lot of them are forming small little groups of friends. So there may be 2 or 3 houses that the children will, go to. So they're not going sort of from door to door, that they've talked to the people, they've identified the houses they're going to, and everybody is in agreement. So I think something like that is really helpful. I think hand sanitizing after every visit would be good too. I don't know, Deb, do you want to add anything? Or Jean or Josh?
No, I think, I talked to Tony about Halloween, and I think everything that he said, I agree with. I think it's okay for us to, to have Halloween. And certainly, like Tony said, turn off your light if you don't want to be part of it. The important thing too is don't let the kids come in your house. If they can come to your door, but keep them outside. Outside right now is so much better than inside in so many different ways. The other thing I do want to bring up while we're still talking a little bit about COVID is, but for some reason, COVID has a stigma attached to it, so that people even people in town, when you hear about a case or, and generally speaking, people think like, oh, it's COVID. Well, COVID is really like the flu. If you think back when we had the seasonal flu, if you knew somebody that had the flu, you kept away from them so you wouldn't get the flu. Many older people died from the flu. We just didn't, project the numbers as frequently as we are. It's when you get COVID, it's not like it's like it's a virus. It's like chickenpox or the flu or those other types of things. And when you recover, you recover. And when you're recovered, you're fine to be back in the community and to pick up your life and go back to your normal life. But I think sometimes people are overreacting a little bit when they hear, that somebody has it, and I would, I would wish that people would just think a little bit differently about it, because in fact, it's a virus, and you catch it like you catch other viruses through transmission. That's just, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, really. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's a good point, Deb. Thank you. Josh or Jean, anything to add?
No, I think it's been well covered. It's really very simple. Follow the guidelines that we've all been following for the last 7 months. Participate in the fund if you want. If you're not comfortable, don't. And that's really what it boils down to.
No, I'm good with it too. It was addressed properly.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jean. And thank you, Deb.
Mr. Chairman.
Move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, before, I know we were going to jump into opening comments next, but the tax classification hearing was posted for 6:30.
Okay.
And technically, I think we have to start at least within a half an hour of that posting. So do you mind if we jump ahead to that?
Let's go ahead. What page is that on here?
That is going to be page 23. Letter F. And I'm going to unmute Sheila and David and Perry. I think you're unmuted. And who else do I have on here?
Okay.
KK. Unmute, asked to unmute.
Dave Hunt is on.
Yep. KK, I'm there you go. You're unmuted.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, well, we jump into that then. This is a I can't find my paper here, Tony, but
It's right after the request. You'll see a deed, a cemetery plot deed. It's the next page.
okay.
And the first one, it's
I got it.
FY 2021. Okay. Josh, do you have it?
Yep, I move to open the FY 2021 tax classification hearing.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I'll just add a piece here. Just this is a traditional classification hearing, and traditionally we do use a factor of 1. We, the board, do not see any reason to change that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Perry, could you explain what a classification 1 means?
Classification 1 means that there is no commercial shift from residential to commercial. In some larger communities, it makes sense that there's a shift of the tax rate from the residential to the commercial. Where the town of Nahant traditionally does not have any a large portion of commercial, it really does not make sense to use anything other than a factor of 1, which means an equal tax rate for the residential properties as well as the commercial properties. In any
We've been doing this for decades, right?
Correct. This is not a change. At this point in time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass the speaking to our town assessor, Sheila Hamilton, who can provide us some additional information as to what our median sales prices are and our single family values are for the town of Nahant.
Thank you, Perry.
Sheila, before you say something, Mr. Chairman, we should probably vote on the pending motion since we're going to get into discussion about what's going to happen. There's still a pending motion on the floor.
The motion's been made to open the tax classification hearing. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Josh Hanford, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. All right, Sheila, it's all yours.
Thank you. It's very nice to see you all. It's our annual meeting. I just wanted to say, I think for this purpose, I think the notice of the tax classification has to be read. Would that be true, Dan Script, Town Council? I think.
There's no reason not to. So we'll just go ahead and do it.
Mark, do you want me to do it for you?
Yeah, because I don't have it, so I don't have the
Okay, fine. And I'll read it then for you, Mark. Okay, I'll put your hat on.
Thank
The
you.
Nahant Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October the 22nd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. on the issue of tax classification via Zoom online meeting. To join the meeting, Zoom meeting via internet, full Zoom details listed at the end of this announcement. Meeting ID is 822-4831-8337. The passcode 936849. The purpose of the hearing is to allow taxpayers the opportunity to present their views on whether or not residential, commercial, industrial, open space, and personal property should be taxed with one rate for all property classes, or to use different rates for different classes of property. The hearing will include a presentation by the Town Assessor and Board of Assessors. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Board of Selectmen shall determine whether or not one tax rate shall be applied for the fiscal year 2021 tax rate. Currently, the town taxes at a single tax rate for all property classes. In addition, the Board of Selectmen will determine whether or not to allow exemptions for small commercial businesses, owner-occupied residential properties, and/or grant a discount to open space. All concerned taxpayers are encouraged to attend to present their views orally or in writing. If there are questions about the hearing, please contact Sheila Hamilton in the Assessor's Office at 781-581-0212. Mark P. Cullinan, Chairman, Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better.
Okay, well, I hope I covered it all. So I just wanted to tell you that we've been working very hard. You know, we just finished the annual town meeting, and so we are a little behind, but I can say that our real and personal property assessments have been approved by the Department of Revenue, and our total is $1,036,370,381 in total assessment. So that's kind of impressive. We're still going up. We're still going up. I can state that last year, our single average family homes assessed value was $701,200, and our rate was $10.97 per thousand. This year, we have not completed the tax recap, but there's an estimate of approximately $10.50. But the average single-family home has gone up, and that's at $758,400. So we are going to probably see about a 7.5% increase in the residential class, and we'll probably see about a 5% decrease in just the tax rate. So that's where we're heading for this coming fiscal year 2021.
Right, so the difference here, Sheila, then is, we're increasing by 2.5%. You either increase by that amount by increasing the value of the property or increasing your taxes, correct?
Right, it's the total levy from last year. We're going to add 2.5% automatically. And then our new growth this year, which is another factor, is 57,787,000. Last year, it was around 56,000. So for these 2 years, we've had considerable new growth,
That's good.
more than we normally have. It's usually about 30,000.
That's great.
Yeah.
What
So
was the tax rate last year, Sheila?
$10.97.
So we went from $10.97 to a projected rate of $10.50.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's largely due to the value of homes going up.
Correct. Right. That shift.
And,
Right.
and that's better than because we're spending more money.
Well, I mean,
So-
your tax rate bills will still go up because the value is going up, but yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
Well, that's good.
Sorry for a pop quiz question, but how does that compare to the rest of the county or what you're like? Do you know if that's
No, we're all, some communities haven't even had their annual town meeting yet. So we're all a little bit crazy. We're all going to be getting in line though to have all the tax rates set at the same time. So that's 351 communities. Some have been set.
I think this year, Tony, we were in the bottom 3 of Essex County at a current tax rate. So,
so?
Yeah.
For folks on the call, typically we have our town meeting in the spring. And we're typically setting the tax rate in September.
Yep.
And we're getting our tax bills out the 1st of October, due the 1st of November. Our town meeting was postponed due to COVID. So setting our tax rate is postponed. So it's more likely that we're going to have our tax bills sent out in early November, due early December. So we're a little bit behind compared to typical years.
Yep.
Yeah,
And so
Tony,
what I've done, I'm
Sheila,
sorry.
excuse me just for a second. Tony,
Yep.
and I appreciate that statement just because the people that apply for exemptions are concerned about their timeframes, and that hopefully will clarify going forward the business, the timelines that they're going to have to follow. So that excellent statement. Thank you.
And I just wanted to follow up that I've already started preparing envelopes. I'm going to mail everyone who did receive an exemption last year, who are regulars. I know a few people have missed the deadline last year. I made it put them on a list. I'm going to mail them a form so that if anybody else who knows of anybody, they can call the assessor's office and I'll make an appointment and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to file for an exemption. If they're qualified, they can get one.
okay,
Okay.
thanks, Sheila. Great. And thank you to the Board of Assessors. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, just as a point of reference, Swampscott's 2020 residential tax rate was $14.30 per thousand, and their commercial was $25.85 per thousand. So compared to one of our neighbors, our rate is very favorable.
Yep. Yeah.
Perhaps that's one of the reasons real estate's so hot in the hunt.
Yes. Yes. Values are going up next year.
The problem is where you going to go? That's the thing.
Exactly.
I'm Swampscott.
Yeah.
Tony, before we make a motion on approving the residential factor, do we have to approve the water and sewer debt shift first?
Yes.
Yes, so that debt shift does play a role in the tax rate ultimately. And so we need to approve that first. And then the next motion after that will be simply the vote on the residential factor of 1, so that we only have one tax rate. And then what we'll actually be doing is continuing this hearing until the next meeting when we will set the actual tax rate.
So do I have a motion on the water and sewer debt?
Yes, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the water sewer debt shift in the amount of $811,264 for the fiscal year 2021.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Let me just say, for those who may not know what the water and sewer debt shift is, when the town borrows for water and sewer projects, the principal and interest payments for those bonds are raised through property taxes, not through your water and sewer rate. So at the end of the year, we do some accounting, we shift from general revenue, from water and sewer enterprise fund to the general revenue. That the amount in principal and interest payments for those projects. Any other discussion on this?
Yeah. So we're taking real estate taxes to pay the interest and so on the water and sewer enterprise fund, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
So my problem with this, and I know this is on FinCom's radar, is that not all participants in the water and sewer enterprise are taxpayers, specifically Northeastern, and that needs to be corrected. If you're not paying real estate taxes, you're getting a free ride, and it's not right.
It's a good point, Josh.
Great point.
Tony and Dan, maybe we can look into that and somehow how other communities may address that, either in pilot programs or something along those lines. But I think it's a point well taken.
Absolutely.
We do have something that we talked about this at length through this budget cycle with the FinCom. And it's something that we can certainly consider going forward is a different way of doing it. I think the way we looked at it was there's a sweet spot of splitting this amount, maybe not shifting all of it to the tax rate and shifting a portion of it to the tax rate, because if without that shift, and with the anticipated increases in assessments from Lynn Water Sewer, it could really explode the water sewer rates. So that's somewhat the balance we're trying to accomplish. But I completely agree with the premise of, the costs associated with the upkeep of the water sewer system should be charged to those who contribute to the water sewer system. And getting that free ride for those nonprofits that are exempt from property taxes, it's a tough pill to swallow. So I completely agree with it. It's a matter of, could we look at this water sewer rate and change that? So, it may be possible where like certain large users are charged a different rate versus average users or less than average users. I don't know if you can tier that, and that might be a way to accomplish it. So it's definitely something on the plate as we go through the next budget cycle.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very good point, and if we could look into, I'm sure other communities are dealing with this same thing. So
Yeah. So it's it's a bit of a shell game, right? So if you pay it on your water bill, or you pay it on your real estate tax, but it gets paid. So I'm in favor of putting as much of it as possible on the water and sewer enterprise, because that the other component of that is that people get a real estate tax bill and they don't have much control over that, as opposed to their water bill is someone in their control. I know a lot of people that have received their water and sewer bills in the last few weeks, I've been pretty surprised at how high they are. The good news about that is that it's somewhat in their control. I mean, you can do your best to conserve water, but there's not much you can do about your real estate tax bill. So it gives you a little more control. So
There's a lot to dig into here, Josh, and I think we need to. But on the flip side of that also, if it's on your property tax, there's a federal deferral on the property tax on that. Where it is, you can't defer, tax defer on your water and sewer. So you can look at it that way also.
And then if people don't pay their utility bills, it gets leaned onto their property tax.
Mhm.
So how does that work for someone who doesn't get a tax bill? That's a question that I'll jot that down. That's something to keep in mind too.
So anyway, I don't want to derail the tax classification effort. I just want to make sure we keep it in our minds, and I know FinCom has that on their plate as well. So over the coming months, I'm hoping we can work with FinCom and come to a common understanding of what we should do.
Great.
But you know something, Josh, you make a great point when you brought up the pilot program there as an assessment to Northeastern. Regardless of how that situation unfolds or works itself out, should we now be looking at a pilot assessment to Northeastern?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think so.
I mean, it just seems like an opportune time to say, hey, guys, you got to contribute.
I agree. I agree, Jane. And we can look at the model that's been adopted by the city of Boston and other communities, and determining what that pilot amount should be.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Good vote.
Chairman. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? This is on the water and sewer debt shift. Seeing, hearing them, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Josh, now we have the residential factor motion.
Yep. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve a residential factor of 1 and not adopt a residential exemption or small commercial exemption for financial year 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion. When it having some, this is the heart of the classification hearing. So if there's anybody that's joining us tonight on Zoom has a question, they can ask it tonight, or they can, ask it tonight. Anything in the chat room, Tony?
Nothing in the chat room regarding this. If anybody wants to unmute themselves, if they want to speak up now on the motion on the floor.
Okay. Seeing and hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Okay. Now we're going to move to continue to November 4th.
I move that this hearing be continued to November 5th, 2020, at which time the Board of Assessors will inform us of the excess levy capacity for the current fiscal year 2021 and for us to return to our Board of Selectmen meeting.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you all to the members of the board.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Good
We'll
job.
see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thank you. See you on the
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to close that hearing, or is that?
No, it's continued. The Board of Assessors need to close their meeting if they intend to do so. So the hearing is continued, but the Board of Assessors need to determine whether they're going to continue talking on their own or halt their meeting now.
I'll accept a motion to discontinue our meeting at this point in time, and we will continue this hearing on the 5th of November.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Perry Barasso, aye.
Catherine
David.
Sherber, aye.
And I think we lost David, but that's a majority. Motion carries. See you on the 5th, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're back to the original agenda and opening comments. Before we get into that, Tony, I'd like to just, for my opening comment, spend a minute by, recognizing the loss of a citizen that we all knew and loved. Knew him through his wife, Peggy. Bob Silva passed away last week. He'll be missed. He served on a lot of committees, spent a lot of time in youth programs for the community. Bob will be sorely missed, and our hearts go out to the Silva family. We'll give just a moment of silence on that. Appreciate it. Thank you. Josh, Gene, any comments? Opening comments?
I have none.
I'll just say that there's been a number of boat incidents in the harbor, and over the next couple of months, we'll be working with the harbor master to review our guidelines for mooring inspections, mooring weights, chain lengths, things like that, to try to minimize those events in the future. We had the same, we had a few boats last October get destroyed, and same thing early this October. So we'll see what we can do to minimize those events by working with our harbor master, Rob Tibbo.
Thanks, Josh.
Now that you brought that up, Josh, thank you. I happened to personally watch Robbie salvage or save a boat off of Joe Beach. It was the Escapins boat, his 33-foot sailboat. And he and Joe Marie went in, and I watched Robbie crawl all over that thing, fall off the side, and do everything he could, and finally freed that boat from the beach and saved a considerable amount of money at a real difficulty. I just wanted to personally, and on behalf of the boards, say that what I viewed was a guy who really takes his job seriously, and someone we should appreciate very much. And I think Tony and I talked about this briefly. He's doing one great job.
You're right, Gene. He is. I know, Josh, you were talking something about possibly looking at some insurance policies on, one of the issues is a large boat that's happened a few times and it gets washed up. It starts leaking fuel and hydraulic fluid and those types of things. It can be a big cost in terms of trying to clean up and damage to the environment. So if we could have that discussion, it would probably be useful also.
Yeah, definitely. That's Rob's brought that up. We'll certainly include that in the discussions. And just to reinforce what Gene said, Rob is obviously really dedicated to his job as a harbor master in Wharfinger. So it's a great asset.
Yeah, we're lucky to have him, for sure.
It was, since our last Board of Selectmen meeting, we had Harbor Master Appreciation Day. And we gave Robbie a call on behalf of the board too, and let him know how much we appreciate him. He's more than part-time, but full-time. He spends so much time down there and does such an awesome job. And was instrumental in securing the new harbor master boat, and he goes, just like many of our volunteers, far beyond his role. So I agree. He does an unbelievable job.
Is that a total volunteer position?
No, it's paid. The head harbor master is a $1,500 stipend, and then the assistant harbor masters, I think, are volunteer. They may get a little bit of money, and then wharfinger is another $1,500, and then the assistants again are volunteered. So for all the great work Rob does, and going out on the water and assisting our police and fire in emergency calls, and he only makes $3,000 a year. So he certainly goes well beyond the role and the responsibility, and we're extremely appreciative of that.
Is that something that we can look at and show a greater appreciation for that?
Financially, it requires a town meeting vote, so it's something we can look at through the budget process.
Okay.
All right, sounds great. Gene, any further comments, opening comments?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, I have a few notices to read. This is state and presidential election information. Early voting is open starting October 17th to October 30th, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4, and Fridays, 8 to 12:30 p.m. Saturdays, October 17th and October 24th, Town Hall, 2 to 4. Sundays, October 18th and October 25th, 12 to 2. Voter registration will end on October 24th. Absentee ballots, last day to apply for absentee ballot will be October 28th. It must be mailed and received by 5 p.m. Election day, November 3rd, 2020. For anyone who's voting on that day, please use the side entrance with the handicap closest to the post office. During election day, all town hall offices will be closed. Anything else, Tony?
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
I guess I would just commend the clerk and her staff. I think we have already had, 30% of voters have already voted. They've sent out 1,000 mail-in ballots. I mean, they are going all out. So kudos to our town clerk and her staff. They're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, she's done an amazing job all year. I mean, all the things that she's gone through, she's done a great job.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure everyone's going to be happy about this next announcement that I have. Duck hunting season will open on October 16th, 2020. Not one of my favorite dates, but I know that there's a lot of concern about this, and I share that concern. I don't like, listening to the guns going off outside windows and 4 o'clock in the morning. Tony, should I read some of the information that you gave me?
I can brief it. It's it's more background information in case we got any questions. But just trying to get ahead of it this year. The last couple of years, it's obviously been a hot topic with the increase in sea ducks around Nahant. I mean, prior, 4 or 5 years prior, I don't think we had nearly as many issues. And the thing to remember is it is legal. It is, so long as they're licensed by the state. In every incident that we reported to the state last year, they had environmental police over at the ramp off the rotary there and, spoke very highly of the folks that they, were in contact with, the hunters that were out there. I mean, the hunting population, for the most part, really, they know the rules very well, and they, the last thing they want to do is put their rights in jeopardy there. So they do a good job. Nonetheless, it's a nuisance, and we understand that. But we just want folks to know that, hunting hours are allowed a half an hour before sunrise and a half an hour after sunset. The Massachusetts regulations state that you have to be 500 feet from a dwelling to discharge a weapon. Our local bylaw says that you have to be 300 yards off the shore of Nahant. So if you're 300 yards off the shore of Nahant which is 900 feet, you're well within the state law. And 300 yards, from the shoreline, if you're in your house, it's closer than you think. It's tough to really measure that. And the hunting tends to happen on calm, clear days. So the sound just projects right up across the ocean. So, our police are very familiar with it. The environmental police have already been contacted by our department, just to give them a heads up, of the activity that's happened in recent years. And, so that's basically the gist of it.
So Tony, let me make sure I got this right. So the 300 yards is offshore is a Nahant bylaw, correct?
Yes.
Dan, the town could change that, right, and make it further?
Right, they can definitely change that. Just got to be careful because hunting is heavily regulated by the state. This bylaw is just fine because it's not really pertaining to hunting as much as it is pertaining to safety of firearm use. So yes, this number can change through town meeting.
Okay.
How
I
far?
know that last year that there's a few residents petitioned our senator and representative to change mass legislation, and apparently, despite a good effort by both Senator Crichton and Representative Capano, it failed. And and I think the hunting lobby at the State House is pretty strong, and we weren't able to get that passed. So if there's something maybe we could look at in our town bylaws, we could look at that perhaps. But as Tony said, I think one of the problems with this, you can make it 500 yards, but who's going to regulate that? We don't have a harbor master out there in the middle of the winter patrolling, and the Coast Guard isn't out there, and the environmental police isn't out there. And whether they're 300 yards or 500 yards, who knows? So that's going to be a difficult one, I think.
I think the other tricky thing too, and after you and I spoke, Mark, I spoke with Dan, and one thing that we kind of talked about was, our jurisdiction as our town bylaws, jurisdiction only goes so far past the mean low tide watermark, right? So, that's another thing to consider. We can't, it's not like we could say 1,000 yards. I think we'd probably surpass our line of jurisdiction.
I see. Mm-hmm.
But that, it would be good to look at that 300-yard limit because I took some Google Maps measurements last year, and I believe at 300 yards, you can be essentially right in the center of the Short Beach Cove between Little Nahant and, let's say, Greystone or Lafayette Terrace, Greystone Road area. And, it's pretty unnerving for, someone to be in that close shooting a shotgun. I know it's legal, but we should review that 300-yard limit, I think.
Yeah, I'd be open to that.
Likewise.
Seeing that you're on Greystone Road, Gene, right? Just don't go on your back deck, man. Don't use camouflage.
Wear your safety glasses.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. Okay, thanks, Tony. Let's move on to new business. We have an appointment that to consider. Josh, you want to make this motion?
Yeah, let me find my,
Page 4.
oh, we're going back, yes. Sorry, I'm scrolling.
Okay. Just while you're looking for that, Josh, this is to fill the position that Bobby Joe Blair had left a few weeks ago. It's the administrative assistant to the town administrator. I know that Tony will talk about it. He's gone through a pretty exhaustive review on the candidates, and it was open in public, and so I'll let him talk to it when we make the motion.
I move to approve the appointment of Kristen Taylor to the position of administrative assistant to the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Tony, you want to talk about the process and the candidates and how you came to your decision?
Yes. So, obviously, before I even get into that, I just trying to fill the shoes of Bobby Joe Blair was an extremely tough task. And, she was actually extremely helpful in, the posting process and the questions that we put together, and even helped evaluate some of the resumes that we received. We received about 13 applicants, and we narrowed that down to 6, interviewed 6, and then, narrowed that down to a top 3 and ultimately decided on Kristen. Our applicants ranged from, folks from all different types of experiences at all different levels of their professional career. Honestly, we had a great pool. Every person I interviewed of that 6-person group there did an amazing job. They interviewed really, really well, and it was very difficult to narrow it down to a top 3 and then down to a final candidate. And Kristen, I think folks in town are probably familiar with her. She worked at the fish store this last year, and she's got 10 years or more experience working at Salem Hospital. She really separated herself from the rest of the group with how she interviewed and answered the questions about the administrative responsibilities of the role, and her experience in and like the tools and the methods that she uses to stay organized and on top of things just far exceeded everyone else, and I'm so confident in her ability to fill this role. I think the board, I think you 3 are going to be very happy working with her. She's a delight. She understands the issues in town. She's familiar with a lot of people in town, and I think she's going to do a remarkable job. So I'm very happy to be putting this recommendation up to you, the board. And I know Josh was able to connect with her too. I don't know if Josh, you wanted to mention anything, but thank you for making the motion.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a bit, and a lot of our conversation was about the expectations, and what I tried to stress to Kristen, and she was already well aware from having already interviewed with you, Tony, is that she's going to oftentimes be the first face people encounter at town hall, and it's really critical for her to present a positive, professional, pleasant, capable demeanor to the public, because that's what we they deserve. So she certainly had that in mind, and as well as, you know, the fact of the matter is, although she's administrative assistant to both you, Tony, as the TA, and also the Board of Selectmen, it's you, the town administrator, that is going to be dealing with her, you know, day to day, hour to hour, and you know, it's important to be sort of your right hand man, and sounds like you guys will work well together. So I think it sounds like a great hire. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it does sound like a good hire. I particularly like, you know, for the past, well over 10 years, her focus has been on customer service, whether it be at Salem Hospital, working with inpatients and outpatients under difficult circumstances sometimes, and also as a general manager at Nahant Fish and Lobster. She seems like she knows how to deal with people and how to interact with people, and I'm sure she'll do a great job. So.
I didn't interview Kristen, but I do know that she's a strong administrator based on the resume that I did read off. Comes from an extremely well-respected family here in town. And I think that over a period of time, she's just what Tony's going to need to, in fact, probably short term.
Great. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing here and there, none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty,
Mark Cullen, aye. Okay. We have a vote to, we're not postponing this one? Oh, no, we're doing this.
We are gonna, so the next thing on the agenda was the utility liens. We typically, we vote this at the same time as we vote to set the tax rate. So because we're postponing the hearing to set the tax rate for 2 weeks from now, I felt it, you know, to give residents the extra 2 weeks to pay any unpaid utility bills was important there. And just for your information, you know, if we were doing it tonight, we had about $92,000 of unpaid utility payments that we would be leaning. Last year's total was about 80,000. So, you know, it is more. We are later in our typical schedule, so that may be some of it. You know, COVID could certainly have a role in that. That's something that we were concerned about throughout this process. So we will have a final exact number for you at the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think it's good that, you know, Tony, what triggers the lien? At what point in the collection process? People, you might want to let people know that. And also, you know, you mentioned COVID. Some people may be struggling, perhaps losing jobs and those types of things. I'm sure that at least in the past we had a payment method. If someone is struggling, just simply come, ask for an appointment with the town administrator, try to work something out with the town administrator and the treasurer collector, and I'm sure we'll try to accommodate, you know, the situation that you're in.
Definitely. One thing I think we did last year was we posted on Facebook kind of a step-by-step guide as to how you can check the status of your payment. So we can repost something like that again and let people know in 2 weeks we're going to be voting on liens, so they can go on there and check if they, you know, have if they have anything outstanding. I think, you know, in my brief conversations with the collector today, he did say that, you know, for the most part, these are annual households that kind of fall into this mix. So, you know, some of it is certainly, I think, unique. And if anybody, like you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, if anybody is having trouble this year due to COVID or for any reason, just please reach out and be more than happy to work something out there.
You know, another thing I'd like to try to put on the agenda at a future date, Tony, is the possibility of putting out quarterly bills for water and sewer utility bills, where we bill, what, 3 times a year now, right?
Yes.
You know, one of the problems with that is, you know, your water and sewer bill can be kind of high, and if you're struggling or something happens and you can't pay that, then all of a sudden you get hit with the next one, and it just compounds the issue. You know, I think if you could, you know, I'm not either do a quarterly. I'm not saying monthly, but the nice thing with a monthly type of thing, or even a quarterly thing, it's less of an amount. People may be a little bit more capable of paying that, rather than getting a big bill at once and then not being able to pay it, and then, you know, a few months later getting another bill. It makes it even more difficult. And not only making it quarterly interest payments, we may get some revenue out of that because we're collecting more money during the year, earlier in the year. So there could be some interest that we could benefit from doing that. But I think it's worth a consideration. I'm not saying monthly. I know that there's an administrative, you know, burden with that.
Yeah.
But maybe quarterly.
Yeah. It's definitely, you know, in the summertime, you get that 1/3 that extends over the summer is always like a huge bill compared to your other two, because it's that outside meter that comes into play. And, you know, kids are home from school or whatnot. So maybe breaking that up by going to quarterly, you break that one up a little bit. Yeah. It's definitely worth a conversation.
Okay, great. This next.
Hey, just one thing, if I can jump in there for a second. And that is, a number of people I've talked to over the last month or so that have water bills have indicated that those bills have been considerably higher than bills in the past. Did they go up that much, and is there a reason for that, Tony?
Yeah, so so the rate last year, for, you know, at this time last year was $9.22 for water. That rate went up to $9.37. Sewer, I don't have those rates in front of me, but we certainly got an increase in our sewer rate from, you know, we've been hitting that ever since Gorilla Farms closed down, and our portion of the Lynn Water Sewer Treatment Plant has gone up. But that sewer rate impact has been in place, you know, for the last couple bills. Most recently, what we found, because we have gotten a lot of calls too, you know, for folks who are concerned about that, you know, take a look at the consumption as well as the total bill. And if you take your consumption and multiply it by $9, so the water rate now is $9.37. If you multiply it by $9.22, you can kind of get an idea of, you know, how much that rate increase impacted your bill. But for the most part, consumption townwide has gone way up. I think a lot of that has to do with you know, summer months, it goes up anyways because your outside water meter's running more. B, we had a very dry summer. So, you know, for folks that have irrigation, you know, water in their lawn more than they have in the past. And then inside consumption has gone up too. And I think that has you know, COVID has contributed to that. You know, when you're home instead of at work, you know, you're drinking 3 glasses of water a day, you're flushing the toilet 3 more times a day, you're at the sink more often, it adds up. So I think that's been a role too. So, you know, was a slight increase in the rate, but I think a large portion of the increase in bill is due to consumption. If if just, if anybody thinks that their consumption is extremely higher compared to this time last year, call the town hall. We do have an abatement form. It's possible that you have a leak in your system somewhere, and we have a process to we can come and test the meter. If you show that you had a leak and you got it fixed, we have a formula that we could potentially utilize to provide an abatement. So there is an avenue for that too.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, good question, Jay.
And just a quick reminder that the sewage bill is based on your water consumption, not a separate meter. So it's directly proportional.
Yeah, didn't know that.
Right, and that's why people have the outside meter, so that you're not being charged for sewer on your outside meter. Good enough. Okay, we'll address that next time. This next item on our agenda seems interesting. I never thought I'd be talking about this, but this is a discussion on pending litigation regarding Graves Light versus the town of Nahant. So I'm interested. I read the information you sent me, Dan. It's intriguing, but why don't you explain to people what this is all about?
It is very interesting, and it's Graves Light and Fog Station LLC, which is the name of the current owner of Graves Light. Folks might remember when that funny-looking helicopter was flying up and down the causeway, taking material to Graves, and that's when they were building that new structure up there and refurbishing it. And that was right between 2013 when the U.S. government auctioned off that property to that company. And they made all the improvements. And until that time, no town has really laid claim to Graves because it was usually under the U.S. jurisdiction, Coast Guard and whatnot. But after that, the town of Hull thought to themselves, hey, wait a second, that's within our boundaries and we should be getting property tax for that. We should be getting permit fees and things of that nature. So the town of Hull started issuing bills to Graves, or that company, I should say, the plaintiff, saying, hey, you owe us some money. And Graves Light and Fog Station said, oh no, we are not part of your jurisdiction. We're not quite sure where we belong, but we don't belong to you. And that's really how the action started in land court. And Judge Rubin said that, well, hey, wait a second, we want to get the input of the surrounding towns as well, including the state. So the action was filed months ago, but more recently, pursuant to the judge's order, the town of Hull included Boston, the Commonwealth, the Winthrop, and the town of Nahant as possible parties in interest. And once I've spoken to Sheila about where we sit with regard to Graves, it became pretty clear that not only is Graves not within our domain, so to speak, it's not even within the same county. So we really have no claim to that. And I explained that to Judge Rubin a few days ago, and she was fine with that. And my comment to her was, well, we'll be happy to dismiss ourselves from this action as long as the Board of Selectmen sign off on it. So that's why we're talking to you tonight. There's no money involved. There's nothing like that. It's just a matter of saying, hey, we don't lay any claim to this piece of property, and good luck to Hull in their efforts to get what they want. And I should say, Winthrop has taken the same position, Boston has taken the same position, and the Commonwealth had some sort of revisionary interest. So they might stay involved a little bit, but not actively.
Okay. That was interesting. Josh, Gene?
Well, thank you.
Nice to look at.
If we're ready,
Yeah, go ahead.
as much as I would like to claim Graves Light as part of the hunt, I will move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the town administrator to seek to dismiss Nahant from the litigation Graves Light versus Town of Nahant, Town of Hull et al., now pending in the Massachusetts Land Court.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye. This next item on the agenda will certainly perk a lot of ears, and this is the Logan Airport flight pattern that may change. I know that Tony, you've been all over this, and I know our liaison resident, is it D'Amico? Is that still?
Robert D'Amico.
Robert D'Amico. He's been helping us on this forever, and I think he's been doing a great job. So, do you want to tell us a little about it, Tony?
Yes, I will share my screen as well. Can you see this PowerPoint, runway 22L arrivals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little small, but
Let me see here. Yeah, it is small. I don't think
That's
there's
good.
much I can do about it.
I think that's
A little bit better.
I can see Nahant there. So that's the important part.
Nahant, I'm circling it with this little hand. So in 2010, the flight paths, and by the way, Dan Script, not only our town council, but also our town expert in his knowledge of airplanes and flight paths, and I don't know what other title you want to provide yourself, Dan, but
That sounds good. We'll go with
it
that.
was obvious, the second this came across my desk, I called Dan right away and said, help me understand what we're talking about. So Dan, jump in at any point, but in 2010, the flight paths were changed. And essentially for runway 22L, which I learned 22 stands for the degree of angle that the runway is at.
It's a
And
magnetic heading.
yes, and then L meaning the left one. And these are arrivals. They basically, the ideal path for those flights go over Salem, Peabody line, through Lynn, through Revere, East Boston, and then they approach. And you can see that line here. And then in 2015, this is additional flight paths in year 2015. This here shows 10% of all 2017 arrivals selected at random for runway 22L for jet and prop planes. So you can see this black line here is the ideal path, and every black line is a flight path, and this is total 10% of all arrivals in 2017. So when I look at this, I see the ideal path, but you can also see the shade of gray that comes off of this black line of, flights that maybe cut this corner a little short for whatever reason, instead of flying up by Essex and turning around and coming back through Salem and Lynn. So you can see that, just for 10% of the flights, you still have quite the variation of, this ideal path. The proposal this is the proposal under this latest study for that runway for arrivals is to change that flight path to head the ideal flight path to head directly over the causeway. I think part of the reason for this proposal is that there's newer technology in navigation system that allows them to take this approach. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, the GPS is being much more sophisticated, and recently some new FAA regulations required planes to, pardon me, for lack of a better term, get better equipment in their aircraft. So I think that's resulting in the new study that MIT is conducting. But the biggest drive of what's called noise abatement really comes from the residents, and you can bet the folks in Salem, Marblehead, and Swampscott have been complaining about the noise, and that probably is what drove most of this attempted change.
All right, so moving on here. This is specific to 60 decibels. So this is the flight path that's currently in place. This is the proposal that comes off to the right. These green dots here signify population that would benefit from this change. And the 60 decibel, basically this outer yellow ring here, is some level of noise, acceptable level of noise, and how far that travels from the plane. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's right. It's not the maximum amount of noise. It's basically the acceptable level of noise. If you look up there at the top of the document you're looking at, it says 60 dB LA max. Well, that represents a level of sound that is permissible within that perimeter that you see there that's sort of elongated.
So it's not that you can't hear those planes from further away. It's just that as you get further away from that ideal flight path, the sound dissipates even more, a little bit more acceptable, I guess. When you're within this yellow track here, it's much louder. The red dot is population disbenefited. So as you can see, based on this ideal track, there are some population here by the Rotary and the tip of Swampscott that's disbenefited. It doesn't show any disbenefit in Nahant. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't hear it. And again, this 60 decibel max range is if the plane took this exact ideal path. And as I showed you on that previous slide, that only showed 10% of all of 2017 flights. Many don't follow that exact path. So, obviously we have a concern that, we're right on the edge of this max, of this line here of noise, and not every plane is going to follow that exact path as it approaches.
This is arrival or both?
What's that, Mark?
Is this arrivals and departures?
No, these are just arrivals. Departures are a different animal. The climb rate on the planes that are really being considered here are so strong that usually they're much, much higher than they would be on arrival. So these are just arrivals. And to get back to what Tony said about the sort of gray lines and the dark black lines on one of the first slides there, that combines turbo aircraft and prop aircraft. So they're putting into the mix your A320s and your Boeings, but you're also including the Cessna 402s that Cape Air flies and the small general aviation aircraft. You can expect the bigger aircraft, the big ones that we're all most concerned about, to be very close to this line because they're so tuned in with the avionics that they're not going to stray too much from this line moving forward. But Cape Air, they're so small, they can be brought in pretty close to the runway and they'll come right over Nahant a lot of times.
All right, so as Dan was just explaining, let's see, the next, so this is B738. So what kind of plane, or B737 to 800, right?
That's a Boeing 737-800. That's a big one.
So these are large commercial passenger planes?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, so as you can see, this area of this 60 decibel max, as we get to smaller planes, that will shrink. It's much, that 60 decibel max area is much wider with the larger planes. Again, showing, the benefit here to these communities, and really this is even more of a sharper angle and, really doesn't show any negative benefit to Liens, Swampscott, or Nahant.
Well, 60 decibels is an arbitrary number. What it boils down to is the closer the flight path is to the houses in Nahant, the worse it is. So making up the numbers, but in Little Nahant, it might be 55 decibels, but It's really, I believe it is really just simply the distance from your house to the flight path. And for most of Nahant, that distance is, for this plan, is reduced. So this is very bad news for Nahant.
Definitely, and that's what, not only that, but like, I know Dan's, the new technology allows for them to approach, this path in a more consistent manner than back in 2017. But, you're still going to have some variation. And like you said, just over that 59 decibels is still really loud. And it's hard for us to understand how loud that is or what that sounds like. So these are some of the questions. I guess before I go further, they're in the public outreach process, part of their process, and they are looking for questions or comments from the communities that are being impacted by this study. Obviously, as you can see from this graphic and the other ones I showed, there's really only one town that, one or two, one town and two small areas of Lynn and Swampscott that are disbenefited by this. And then, significant population in Lynn, Salem, Danvers that are going to be receiving positive benefits. So, the challenge here for us is simply we're extremely outnumbered. There's, an environmental justice aspect to this study that I don't think any of us would argue against. And our comments are primarily that, we would never want to take our noise pollution and put it on others. And likewise, we don't want to take on the noise pollution that others are experiencing now. So, but we are in a tough spot, obviously, where we're the smallest town in this equation.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
Dan, just a quick question. Does wind direction play a role in landings and takeoffs directional?
Absolutely. That's everything, actually. Unless you're in a calm wind situation where you use what they call a calm wind runway. Wind determines everything. And this, as you might figure out, Gene, only applies when the wind is flowing in the right direction, basically out of the southwest. That's only the only time they would land on the 2-2s. So there's a bunch of other runways at Logan, and they probably use 2-2 left. I don't know, maybe 15% of the time, maybe a little bit more. It's a popular one. It goes right down Linway, essentially. But yes, wind direction is everything.
Southwest
Thank
is
you.
during the summer when everybody's outside.
Yeah, you take off and land into the wind.
Yeah.
As much as you can.
So, Dan, let me get this straight. This new route, are you saying that 10% of the arrivals now already take this route?
No, I'm sorry. No, not this particular route, that particular runway. And that's just in my estimation, based on my observation of the planes coming and going, and they have particular websites I look at. But no, it's not this particular route. This is still being developed. This particular runway, I'd say, is used maybe 15, maybe even 20%. It's a popular runway. I should mention that in the big picture here, what we're doing is preparing questions for a regional briefing on November 3rd, I believe it is. So we submit questions to our local contact, and we have a regional briefing in which Tony will be involved. Mr. D'Amico, I believe, will be involved in a few weeks or in a week and a half or so. So that's really the big picture at the moment.
Now, I mentioned this to Tony earlier. I remember, and I drove back by it today. It's still there. I'm not sure if it's operational, but down at the life-saving station in the back left-hand corner, there's a monitor there that Logan Airport had put a number of years ago, maybe 20 years ago or so.
Number 18. It's monitor number 18. Yeah, absolutely.
That's still operational?
According to Mr. D'Amico, it is.
I mean, can we look at data from that?
we can look into it. I can send an email. Actually, I'll put that as one of the questions for the regional briefing. It's a great question. Let me write it down, actually. So we'll look into it.
It'd be nice.
I know, Tony, when is the, how long is this, public period open for?
I don't think, they didn't really give us a definitive date. They just told us when the regional briefing is going to be and when comments are due and that sort of thing. I don't know if they've fully determined when.
Would it make sense, for, you know, perhaps Dan and you to draft a generic comment for the town? And perhaps we could try to get a petition around town for people to sign it. Rather than trying to get everybody to send some, you know, their own little petition, comment in when that most of us don't even know what we're talking about. But some sort of generic, comment that we could use as a petition, to send in might work.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. And Tony drafted a letter, or helped draft a letter to Senator Moulton that might be helpful in that regard too.
Didn't we ask on the call, Dan, about test flights to like actually live hear the impact of the flight path?
We may have. I don't particularly recall that question, but we absolutely may have. And I don't recall hearing anything in response with regard to the actual noise, because I think one question we asked is, well, how loud is 60 decibels? How can we determine what that is? And we never got a good answer. So that'll be one of the questions that we put forth.
I guess we could go stand on the Linway.
Well, not really, because this is still projected, right? This isn't the actual flight path yet. But my guess is that this MIT study group has some sort of device that will accurately depict what 60 decibels is, or give us a good comparison as to what we can imagine that to be.
All right, and then Mr. Chairman, you asked about percentage of flights that use this route. It does say on these slides. So, for instance, here, this is the Boeing 777.
777.
It's a 6% of the fleet would be utilizing this path and this runway.
On arrivals only, right?
Arrivals.
Right.
E190s, what are those?
That's a regional jet. That seats about 100 people. Those are flown by, SkyWest, Mesa, Republic, folks like that.
That's about 0.25%. The other 0.25%, A320s.
Those are the big ones. Airbus 320.
Those
Very
are
popular.
big. Yeah, and then 737 is 15%. Yeah, right here. So most of these are large planes. Only, a quarter, let's say 75% are large planes. Right, Dan?
Oh yeah, Boston is a major hub, so most of the planes you see coming through are Skyways, are the big ones.
I see in the chat room that Ken Colangelo put out for comparison. Thank you, Ken. He says a quiet countryside, 20 decibels, quiet conversation, 40 decibels, normal conversation, 80 decibels, traffic, 80, industrial noise, 100, very loud music, like at a rock concert, 120, nearby thunder, 120, and a jet engine, 140. So thanks, Ken. I think, that's helpful information.
Okay, thank you, because I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So that's the presentation. Do you want me to show the letter? see.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
you may have answered this, but if you were to use the wind directions
Right.
for over the course of a year, how often would these runways be used in terms of the total landings?
Well, my best guess is somewhere about 15 to 20%. I know Mr. Skirtis is on the line. He's been flying for quite some time. He might have a better answer for that. But I can tell you this: we can ask that as one of the questions that we submit to the study team to ask just how often is 2-2 left used.
Exactly.
Yep, good question.
You've talked to Senator Crichton about this, Representative Capano, Tony?
I have calls in to their offices. Quite frankly, I think that, they're kind of in a sticky situation, right? Because they represent both communities and, a larger portion of their district, benefits than disbenefits. But I don't think that, that being said, I think both of them would be more than happy to present our comments. So, in our conversations with D'Amico, who is very familiar with this and the politics per se behind it, we decided, our first step was to reach out to Congressman Moulton's office. So we did write a letter that the three selectmen have seen, basically, expressing some of these concerns and asking him to get involved on behalf of the town. And then we were putting together a list of questions to submit to the study group that we can maybe modify into more of a petition or letter that, maybe we can figure out like an electronic sign-on way of doing it that we can send on behalf of the town.
So Dan, I'd be interested if you get that data from the light saving station,
Yes.
what that data includes. Does
You
it
got it.
include just the decibel levels, the time of day, perhaps the wind direction at the time?
Okay.
Give us, more information.
Okay.
But this does seem like a serious issue, basically, to have.
Let me see. Mr. Scortis, I'm gonna ask you to unmute. You did make a comment in the chat. I don't know if you'd like to articulate that on your own or if you want me to read it.
You can read it.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can read it.
All right. So RNAV, Mr. Scortis wrote, RNAV is a disaster for Nahant. I've been using RNAV for 40 years. I was on the original Noise Abatement Commission with Joe Moshe, and he's happy to assist. RNAV is, in simple terms, means aircraft can choose any path they want to Logan, a path with clearance from air traffic control. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Arrivals can change greatly. Cape Air has already been flying over Bass Point a lot. It's Swampscott and Marblehead wanting to put the planes over Nahant. Have you been actively following this study, Mr. Scores?
No, I haven't. I just jumped in because I saw that there was going to be a talk about the RNAV, and RNAV basically gives the pilots the ability to, create their own beacon to home in on, so to speak. So when you're doing 22 left or 22 right, and basically coming down the windway and over wind, basically they're following the beacon right to 22 right and left. If with RNAV you could create your own beacon, so to speak, like out by, say, Egg Rock or out that way, and basically if you go to an RNAV system, this is mostly going to affect smaller airplanes. I mean, obviously these big planes can't make those tight turns over. That's why Cape Air is going over Nahant a lot, because they can come right in and then take a left and go right into 22 left or right by making an abrupt turn there, which you can't really do with a big, 777 or A300 or A320 without, giving the customers, the passengers a rough ride. INAV is a disaster for Nahant, because that's going to mean that they're going to be cutting corners more than they do now, with, creating their own artificial beacon, so to speak, to the path of 22 right and left.
Well, I think we would appreciate your help in, providing comment from the town, helping draft our comment or petition, sending one separately, we'll take all the help we can get.
Yeah, I can, I'll jump in. I'll see what you have so far. And, again, it's, they've been, we go back, when the original Noise Abatement Committee started, these were problems that were happening for Little Nahant way back then. Because what happens is a lot of the pilots get lazy. The opposite side of runway 22, left and right, is called runway 4 right and 4 left. So when they're departing on that same runway, it's called 4 right and 4 left, and then that's going towards the windway, going towards Lynn, and then they're supposed to turn midway on the causeway and then kind of fly out that way, and that puts them kind of further over towards Swampscott and Marblehead. The problem is when the pilots make the turn early on the departures, that's when they end up over Little Nahant, like dead center, or Short Beach. And that's what we were catching them doing years ago. And we would call on the Logan hotline. They've got a actual phone number. You can call into the Logan tower there, where you can make a verbal complaint while it's happening. The residents can do this. So when the residents of other towns do it more than we do, that's when these things start to shift and change, because it's a constant movement of, who's complaining the most. It kind of gets the most attention. If you drift off and nobody from the Nahant calls and complains about the noise, then they go, well, maybe we'll use a different runway for a little while, or we'll do this or we'll do that. And that's basically it. When you start with the RNAV stuff, that's going to give the ability for pilots, especially in smaller planes, to start creating their own path to 22 left and 22 right, for instance. And we have to not let them do this. This RNAV will be a disaster for Nahant.
All right, so that's great info. I mean, I think we're all share the same concern. Could you shoot me an email? My email is abarletta@nahant.org.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping in, Rick. Your expertise will be very helpful, and hopefully we can lean on you a little.
Yep, I'll be happy to jump in.
Okay.
Emily's iPad. Let's see. Try and find you, Emily. Ask to unmute you. Emily, I'm trying to unmute you. If you can unmute. Okay, there you are.
I was just looking at the two graphs, wondering about what sort of altitude are at different points in that flight path. Because it seems to me that when the flights go over Salem and Lynn, they're high still. But it looks like the part that's going right over Little Nahant is when I straighten out the line, it looks like that's on the real approach, and they're pretty low there. So I wonder if we're just picking up the lower end of it.
Yes.
Dan,
Yeah, Emily, they're heading to what's called a final approach fix, and as you just pointed out, they're on a descent. They're on a 3-degree descent. So when they're over Salem in that area, they're right around 4,000, 3,000 feet. But when they hit right about the beginning of the Linway there, they're going to be down to about 1,700 feet above the ground, and then they're on a constant descent down to the runway. So you're absolutely right. They're descending as they get closer to the threshold of the runway.
So that 60 decibels will be lower to the ground at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, they're also descending, so theoretically they're powering down, so they're much quieter than they would be otherwise. But yes, they are descending, and it will be more of an
So I
impact.
haven't started worrying yet about where they're going to dump their fuel, but I'll worry
They're not
about
going to dump fuel on final, trust me. They're not dumping fuel on the final approach. That's not going to happen.
All right. Well, thank you, Tony. I'd be if you could draft a cover letter or something for a petition, I'd be glad to take the lead on that and start knocking on doors.
Okay. Dan, you want to repeat the regional briefing is November?
November 2nd, and that's a Zoom call with a bunch of towns and their representatives. But most importantly, it's the team that's leading the whole study out of MIT regarding noise impact and noise abatement. So that is sort of their public comment portion. And then we'll get a better gauge as to when they expect to actually implement these changes. And more importantly, if there'll be some sort of probationary period where we can endure it for a month or two and then provide more feedback.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you are available that day, we'd like to have, one of you three represented in that call.
Yeah. Who's ever available, one of us will be on. Okay.
There's a couple other questions. I don't know do you want to continue with,
let's
this
take
topic?
let's take the questions on this topic.
Okay. The next one is from Mark or Vi. I'm going to unmute you. Or I'm trying to. There you go.
Yeah, I just, given what Dan was saying with the new technology, if they agree to that line, can't they also narrow the allowable variations? I mean, your chart showed this big wide, here's the center line, but planes are going left and right. But with the technology, they should be able to narrow it down and restrict them from getting too close, closer to Nahant or closer to Salem. But you got to follow the direct line right down the center. I guess it's a question for your meeting when you have it, really, more than my question to you.
Yeah, well, the angle of intercept on the final approach it can't be too drastic, because as Rick is saying, you send the passengers for a real ride. You don't want to do that. With the more surgical they can be, the better they can cue into that final approach fix and then get on the final leg of the flight.
I mean, it almost seems like Cape Air has put a GPS point either on Egg Rock or on Nahant.
Cape Air comes in visual most of the time. They'll just come in and look at the runway and they'll look at the lights and determine what their angle needs to be for the most part, unless it's strict IFR, which is say very, very cloudy. But yeah, you'll see Cape Air come right over Nahant quite a bit, as Rick mentioned earlier. They'll easily come over Nahant because they have much more flexibility in terms of their maneuverability to get on the final approach, and they'll land visually without really even having to follow a particular glide path. So that gives them more flexibility, I should say.
Suzanne Macarelli, I'll just read her. Basically asked, how can residents help you? Mr. Chairman, she is volunteering to help get signatures.
I'll be in touch with her.
Be in touch. And Michelle Capano asked, can the meeting be posted publicly for residents to attend and call in? I'm assuming, Michelle, that I'm going to try to unmute you, but I'm assuming you're asking about the regional briefing. Dan, is that limited to like officials from the town, or is that open to the public? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I asked them for a official invitation. Once I get that, I will let you know. We can let everyone else know as well.
Michelle, you're unmuted. Is that what you were referring to, the regional briefing?
Yeah, so I guess the question is, if it's a meeting held by a public body of the state, wouldn't it be considered a public meeting?
Yes, yes. But remember, public participation is not required in a public meeting. It is a business meeting after all. So they can just have people listen in, but not necessarily take comments from the general public.
No, exactly. I don't expect us to voice any comments, but at least the opportunity to dial and listen into the meeting.
Yeah, I will let you guys know. I expect to get that invitation hopefully tomorrow. The problem is here, Michelle, is that the guy that we spoke to about 2 weeks ago, Tony and me, left. He went to MWRA. So now we're left with his replacement. So the communications have been a bit more difficult, but it'll be okay. We'll get it out.
I might have scared him off.
Yeah, Tony was not nice to this. Tony was very professional, but Tony was very stringent and like, hey, listen, we're getting the bottom end of the stick here, and we're not going to stand for it.
He went underground to MWRA, right?
Yeah. I mean, more or less, I was just we were getting the same briefing as, Salem and Lynn, and I'm like, well, you're delivering good news to them. We're getting bad news. So, we're looking for a little bit more information. But anyways, Michelle, that's a great comment. We will, as soon as we get the info, you're right, it should be a public meeting, and we'll try to create maybe like a tab on the website or something on this issue alone, and all that info will be there. I had another question in the chat about whether the slides that I was showing would be available online. So yes, like I said, we'll try to create an easy to get to page on the website and put all that info on there. Okay. That's all I have in the chat.
All right, thank you. Let's see, that ends new business, I think. Yes. Ongoing business for preserving.
We have the cemetery buyback.
Okay, I missed that. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I move to approve the requested buyback of the presented cemetery lot with 2 cremation plots located in the southeast quadrant for original purchase price of $1,000 previously sold to Alexander J. Lindsay.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
This was back when the town pre-sold lots at the cemetery. We no longer do that because of the limited space. And we are going to purchase it back for the same price that they purchased it from the town.
Right, and I think we're required to do that by law. You can't speculate on grave sites. So you can only reimburse what they paid for. Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Okay, ongoing business, preserving East Point. I don't have anything to say other than the Board of Selectmen did release a summary of our latest appraisal of East Point. It's available at nahant.org. I encourage people to take a look at that so they can have a little bit more information. Josh or Gene, do you have anything on this topic?
No.
Just in addition to the appraisal values, there's also the professional, let's call it resume of the person that made the appraisal. Very experienced individual who's well aware that appraisal could be challenged in court. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at the appraisal.
Okay, great. Okay, next we have a vacancy on the school committee. This is an announcement. I guess there's a vacancy at some point, maybe our next meeting. We'll have a joint meeting with the school committee to vote on appointing a person to fill the unexpired seat. Tony?
Yes, we've gone through this a couple times with the planning board and board of assessors. Whenever we have an elected position go vacant, our section 313 of the town charter requires a joint vote of the board of selectmen and the remaining members of that board that has the vacant seat to appoint someone to fill the seat until the next election, when that seat will be open for the remaining term of that seat. So we have two applicants submitted to myself and Superintendent Parentozzi. Those applicants are Patricia Karas of 119 Castle Road and Regina Lane of 62 Little Nahant Road. So at the November 5th joint meeting with the school committee, we will vote. First, both will be nominated, and then we will make a vote for that open seat. Also, between now and then, I invite the Board of Selectmen or any member of the school committee to reach out to Patty or Regina if you'd like to interview or if you have any questions, and I'm happy to help the three of you set something up if you'd like.
Great, thank you, Tony. Okay, next on the agenda is Kelly Green's golf course, and I think we have the golf committee with us today, right?
Yes, let me unmute the chairman.
So just for a little background, current manager there is leaving, has left at the end of the month, right, Tony?
Yes.
The town has put a request for proposals out. We received, I think, 2 proposals. The golf committee did the review and the evaluation of proposals, and they have a recommendation, I understand, Tony?
Yes, and I've unmuted the chairman Chairman Fitzpatrick, if you want to.
Yeah, Pete, if you could go through the process that you went through.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
So thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time. So I just want to say thanks to Mary Ellen Schuman, Tony, and Dan Script for guiding us through this process. I believe they met all the requirements, posted all of in the appropriate registers and places where we would announce the bid. We did a walkthrough. I think there was 4 or 5 potential bidders at the walkthrough. Ultimately, we did receive 2 bids, 2 sealed bids, which were opened publicly by Tony on this past Monday at 10 a.m. That evening, the golf course committee met at a scheduled meeting to receive copies of the proposals and kind of just outline the way we would review them. And then last evening, we got together again at a scheduled meeting to discuss a recommendation that we would make to the town. Before I give you the actual what we recommended, the committee was very adamant that this was one of the toughest decisions that they made. They thought that both proposals were very well written. There was a lot of effort on both parties. We do know most of the people that bid. People have worked at Kelly Green's on both of the proposals. So that probably made it a little bit tougher for all of us. But in reality, didn't come down to personalities. It came down to that they were just we were lucky to get 2 good proposals. So the process that we use is in the RFP, there was 7 questions, and each one was weighted with a certain amount of points. So independently, each committee member rated based on the description and gave their level of points. And we made it clear to the bidders that this was not, if you could get more points and still not be selected, that did not happen. But it was only one piece that we used to try and evaluate. So the first motion, go ahead.
Did you read through what those criteria were that you evaluated?
Sure. Give me 1 second. So these criteria were in the RFP. So the bidders knew this, when they put their proposals together. The first one was, and Mark, you may remember this because you may have authored this several years ago. But the first one was revenue to the town, and that was 25 points. And there's, a bunch of words that describe what that entails, but that's just the title. The second one was golf course management experience. Third is restaurant/bar management experience. Number 4, reporting and accountability. Number 5, financial stability. Number 6, maintenance plan. And number 7, marketing outreach. So those were all the categories. Do you want any specifics on any one of them, or is that good?
No, they were on a scale like exceeds.
No, it was a points-based scale. So the first one was worth total of 25 points. The second one, 2 through 5 were 20 points total, and the last 2 were 10 points total. So any other questions on that?
Nope,
okay.
I don't.
So I have everyone's, because this was all done, we did the evaluations on our own, but when we met together, every committee member provided me copies of their evaluations. So I have all that. As soon as I write up the minutes and we approve them, that'll be posted to the website. But if any of the selectmen or Tony, if you need that to help in your decision, I'd be happy to get that to you prior. So I created a spreadsheet just to tally up all the numbers, and the numbers came to 575 points out of a total 625 for R&B management. R&B management, just I'm assuming you guys have kind of maybe seen the proposal at least. So R&B management is Brett Waterman, the current superintendent, and his significant other. So they received 575 points. The other proposal was Nahant Golf Club at Kelly Greens, and that's Toby Ahern, Gary Lynch, and Nancy Hampson. All I think you probably know them at some point. And they had 508 points. Then what we did is we looked at each individual category, because there was a couple of categories, like financial stability, for instance, was a very big, there was a 30-point difference in just that one category. And we said, okay, let's look at all of the categories to see, did we miss something? Why was one so bad? Not bad, but so different than the other? And so on the financial stability portion, there was a 47-point difference. So we said, wow, let's dive into that to see what that really means. So we did take a look at it, and we said, if we had the ability to ask questions, which we didn't because it was sealed bid, we probably would have got a valid response, or we'd like to think that we would have got a valid response from the Nahant Golf Club, which had a lower number. So then we said, okay, let's assume that we take that one off the plate and give them both the same number. R&B management still came out ahead. And there was a couple of other categories. The biggest one, I think, was the first one, which is revenue to the town. And we didn't finally just say, oh, well, they're going to give us the most money, so let's take it. That was just one of the pieces. I think if we could have taken the two and taken one piece out of one and one from the other and merged them together, we would have liked to do that, but that's not the process. So we did our best. There was a motion to reject all the bids that was made at the meeting, and that did not pass by a 4-1 margin. We had 5 people present. So we move forward with making a recommendation to the selectmen that they would consider R&B management to take over.
Well, first, thank you, Pete, and thank you to all the members of the committee. I know how difficult that process can be, having gone through it 3 or 4 times myself. Typically you're dealing with people that you know very well, that you're friends with, that are close to the community, and whenever I went through it, it was very difficult, and I'm sure that all of the members of the committee were fair and balanced when they did the review. I can, just as one member of the board, say that I rely almost entirely on the opinion of the golf course committee. You are the people that are down there on a day-to-day basis. You know what is working, what isn't working. So I rely on your advice tremendously. And I want to thank you again for going through this. Again, I know how difficult it can be. Josh or Jean, any comments?
No, I would just say that myself, ordinarily I'd ask for more information or more data with respect to the 2 candidates, not having seen it. Basically supporting the selection or the choice made by the golf course committee.
I have no comment.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just also want to echo your comments to the committee, the chairman, and the 2 organizations that bid, and everybody else that that even those that were interested and didn't bid. The committee really did a lot of work putting the RFP together, handling the walkthrough. Dan Scripp and Mary Ellen helped a lot with that. A lot of folks helped out. So a tremendous job really by the committee, and obviously a tough decision. And I commend both bidders for going through the process of putting together a bid and submitting that to the town, and just again the committee for going through the whole process. So and Pete, as the chairman, you do such a great job, and we appreciate it, and to you and all your members.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Pete. Is there a motion on the floor here?
Let's see.
And do you want to explain to the selectmen, I guess, their options?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. The first option is do nothing. You don't have to do anything tonight. If you want to digest it a bit more and make a decision at the next meeting, that's fine. So that's one option. The second option is you can reject both proposals, because after all, that is within the power of the town. If it's not within the best interest of the town, we can reject both and then rebid it if we want to do that sort of thing. Or of course, you can accept the recommendation made by the committee, or not. You can select the other bidder as well. So there's a lot of different things, but if you'd rather do nothing tonight, that's fine. It can wait until next time.
We could certainly take it under advisement. I'm not sure I would change. I don't believe rejecting all proposal is, because you have to do that based on something, based on what is in the best interest of the town.
Right.
And I don't think it's in the best interest of the town to reject both proposals. So I have a hard time justifying a vote on that personally. I'm willing to take it under advisement. I'm willing to consider a motion to award the leasehold.
I think that it's important to note that the other parties considered bidding, but didn't. So in other words, the interest wasn't limited to just these two that formally bid. So that's important to note. It's not a case of we only had two interested parties. And, you know, it's, I'm sure, a tough time to be, you know, half this business is the clubhouse, the restaurant. It's kind of a terrible time to be trying to open a restaurant right now. So while I wish there was more interest or higher bids, I think given the current circumstances and the effort that the golf course committee has gone through, I would be in favor of supporting their decision and voting to approve their choice for the winning bid.
Josh, I can also say that if we accept the bid recommended by the golf course committee, even at that point, if we cannot come to terms at the lease, we still don't have to sign it. We can still go back. It can go back to bid, even if we accepted the bid, but we can't agree to an agreeable lease.
So
That's
we'd
also an option.
be voting to approve the town administrator to begin contract negotiations,
Yeah,
basically.
accept the winning proposal and then authorize Tony to start negotiations.
And
Go ahead.
Just for clarification, this is a 5-year lease that we're discussing here.
It's a 5-year lease with 2 5-year options to be awarded at, you know, maybe in year 3 or something like that. And I guess, but just to add that we would be starting negotiations, there are some questions that the committee had that if the answer does not come out the right way, we would push on Dan very hard to have the negotiations come out get the answers that we want. Otherwise, we would not move forward.
That's fine.
Are you at liberty to say what those questions are, Pete?
So I can give you one example, they're not necessarily bad. So in the proposal that we selected, they listed their operating hours, and their operating hours, it said in-season operating hours, and it listed, you know, what we thought was reasonable hours. And then the question we had was, so what does that mean about off-season hours? Does that mean they're closed, you know, December through March or something? Unfortunately, the way the process works, we couldn't ask that question. But that's certainly one of the questions that we would ask. And if their position is that they're planning to close the kitchen through December through, you know, March or something like that, we would not want to move forward with them. It's just an example of one of the questions. Some of the other ones are more just explaining. I think there's people get confused with capital improvements because the town authorizes in the contract up to $20,000 of capital improvements in lieu of rent. So some people, you know, capital improvements is capital improvements, okay? And in that situation, the town's paying for it, but you could do your own capital improvements. So there's a little bit of question, you know, they said, okay, we're planning to do this. And so we said, are they planning to do that with the $20,000 that the town's giving, or is that something they're planning to do on their own?
Well, Pete, if you want to issue written questions to the bidders and then evaluate the responses, I don't see a problem with that at all. In fact, I think it's wise to get those answers before moving forward. If that's
so
really
we actually,
so
one of them, we did a 3-step process. First, we dealt with the motion to reject the bids, and as I mentioned earlier, that was voted that we would not reject them 4-1. Then somebody made a motion. Are we going to move forward and select one, or are we going to pause and ask questions? And so that motion carried that we were going to move forward and make a selection last evening from 4-1. So we kind of talked about whether we would ask the questions. We didn't feel that the questions were major showstoppers. We think we could work through them, but they are outstanding questions.
Okay.
Okay. So then this would just be a motion to begin contract negotiations, and then at another meeting, if everything aligned properly, we'd vote to approve the lease agreement. Correct?
Well, we accept the proposal. And then we authorized Tony to enter into negotiations for actual contract, because the proposal and the contract are two separate things. They're not the same thing, as you know.
Right.
But ultimately, the final contract, I think the question from the chairman was the final contract would go in front of the board for approval.
Absolutely, 100%. Yep.
Pete, is there something in the bids for lines of credit or financial resources or leverage or collateral, anything, some kind of assurance of financial stability?
So I guess, Dan, jump in if you want, but there's two things. So one, three things. They had to give us $2,500 to bid. And then there's a $25,000 surety or security deposit. I'm not exactly sure what the correct terminology is on that, or bond. So that's one of the things. The other piece was that we asked for them to, in the proposal, to demonstrate their financial stability. And I know that's vague, and they can demonstrate it however they want. One of the R&B management gave us a couple of bank statements, and it's in the proposal. You can look and see what the numbers are there. The other one did not give us any financial statements. And just as a point of the last time when John Moore had it, he also gave us a bank statement or a letter from a president of the bank saying he had, I think at the time was probably a couple $100,000 in his an account. So we got those bank statements from one. The other one said that if selected or if awarded, they would provide a bank statement with the necessary cash in it. So that's the one item that we all kind of said, okay, they basically didn't give us really anything. They said they would give it to us. I'm not sure how much, honestly, that's really worth, because I can give you a bank statement with, 300,000 in it today, and then I can empty it tomorrow. But one did and one did not. Dan, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think you capsulized it just fine.
Okay.
And you said that you guys discussed that, and even if the other bidder had provided, ultimately the numbers would have ended up similar, and R&D would have came out on top based on that.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly, and this is why it was so hard, to be honest with you. So we took that one out, and we took it out because it was a big disparity. And like I said earlier, it looked like, I just have to think that if I called up those guys and said, show me a bank statement with 100 grand in it, I'm sure they could come up with that, right? I just had to believe that. And that's just my opinion. Some of the other folks, so when I rated it, I said, okay, one of them gets 20 points, one gets 15. Some of the people in the committee said, well, they didn't give us anything, and one gave it to us, so they took it as all or nothing. So they said 20-0. And this is where, to maybe Mark's comments, the point system isn't the best thing in the world, and it's not the only thing. So we just zeroed that one right out. We said if they both had the same, then the numbers came to 575 for R&B management, 555 for the Nahant Golf Club. Yes, I think that exemplifies why it was so hard, because they were both weighted. That's splitting hairs, in my opinion.
Can I ask just your opinion? This would just be an opinion, I know, but is there, in your opinion, any reason to believe we would get a better bid if we went back out to bid? Just in your mind?
I guess you have to, I've thought about that a lot, today especially. I guess I have to understand, what is the definition of better? Would we get more money for the town? You might get a little bit more. Somebody, now everybody knows what somebody else's bid is, so the lesser one might bid more, but I don't think it's, you're not going to get, I think it wouldn't be fair if they come in, substantially more. So one bid was 84,000, the other was 80,000. So not to discount $4,000, but I don't think you'd get much more from a financial standpoint. Maybe a little bit. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily fair.
Yeah.
Would you get, the question isn't, in my opinion, what we would get different from the two that we already have. Because again, I think same thing. Now that those two bids are public, it's almost an unfair, it's almost unfair to those two. So they could make theirs, each one, maybe they could change it a little bit, but the question comes, would you get, if we just stopped and started the whole process again, what would we as a town do to change the RFP to maybe get more people to bid? Right? Because then we'd have more options. I don't know if that would happen. Last time we did this, 5 years ago, we got one bid. We had, at the walkthrough, we had, I think, 4, what I would call serious inquiries. Mike Galan at Ocean View, I think he did a tremendous job. He had a team of people there. He had lawyers and accountants, and he really did some analysis. And he sent us a letter, and just in summary, said that in all the analysis that he did, it wasn't viable based on what we were looking for. We had another group that was did entertainment type stuff from out of town, and I think they were serious too. I mean, they had their couple of gentlemen from that company, and their attorney was there. I know Dan talked with their attorney. They asked some good questions, and I think it is, the course is what it is. And as much as we'd like to get more out of it, I don't know if you really would, Josh. I don't.
What's the relationship? What's the relationship with these two groups with the golf course in the past? I'm not aware.
Okay, so the one we selected, R&B Management, is a partnership between Brett Waterman. Brett Waterman is the current green superintendent, so he's the guy that manages the golf course, maintenance of the cutting the grass and fertilizing and taking care of the greens.
Yeah.
And I think it's his fiance, or let's call it his significant other, and she's not from around. She hasn't had experience down there. She is an executive chef at some pretty top-notch golf courses in the New York City area, and she just recently moved up here. The other proposal is Toby Ahern. Toby Ahern, when we first signed the contract with Johnny Moore, Toby was the golf management or director of golf operations. He's a PGA pro. He has a great background. He was the pro at Ferncroft. And his partners are Gary Lynch, who Gary Lynch is currently running the golf course today as far as golf course operations go. And I think he's probably doing a lot of work helping out in the absence of the owner. And then their third partner is Nancy Hampson, and Nancy also works down at the golf course in some capacity. I'm not exactly sure what all her duties are. I know she does work in the pro shop, but she probably does some financial analysis in the background. So that's did I answer your question, Gene?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
It's good that they're both parties are very familiar with the course and in the restaurant, so that's pretty comforting, actually. So it's not someone coming blind, not understanding what they're getting into.
How did they both answer keeping the restaurant open during the slower months?
Neither one of them addressed that, and that's, as I mentioned earlier, if we move forward to negotiate with either one, that's probably the first question that we're going to ask. And the only reason I'm nervous a little bit is because a lot of golf courses up here do shut down, and people that work there go to prior to the pandemic, go south for the winter, right? And that's not what we don't think as a committee. We don't think that's in the best interest of the town. We understand the golf course you may not be playing golf, but we think the restaurant, clubhouse, bar area is a valuable asset to the town, and we would very much like to keep that open through the slow months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd certainly be willing to accept the recommendation of the committee and authorize the town administrator to begin contract negotiations and to report back.
I would too.
Okay. I have a motion there, Josh, if you wanted to read that.
Yeah. I move that the Board of Selectmen name R&B Management LLC as the winning bidder for the leasehold on the Kelly Greens Golf Course and authorize the town administrator to immediately begin contract negotiations for a lease agreement.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made. Second. Any further discussion on this motion? Okay. Well, thank you, Dan, and Tony, and the golf committee for all the work you did here. Again, I don't have to repeat myself, but I know how difficult it is. We really appreciate it. You guys are all volunteers, and I know you spend a lot of time away from home agonizing over this stuff. So
Thank
thanks.
you.
Appreciate it. All in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, a couple more items here. Hopefully we can move through these. We can all go watch the debate a little, but we have a discussion on public shade trees, Dan?
Yes, there's been an ongoing issue regarding the trees on Valley Road. In fact, we recently lost one, as I recall, on the corner of Valley and what was that? Ocean. So with the winds getting stronger and stronger as the years go by, there's a bunch of folks up at the top of Valley Road that had questions to whether their trees are public shade or not. And I went out there to visit the area, and I spoke to Mark Carbone a bunch of times, and we're still trying to figure out which are shade trees and which aren't. The biggest problem we're having is deciding or determining where the boundary is separating the public way and the private property. These properties being 100-some years old, it's difficult to determine where exactly it is. But pursuant to Chapter 87, if there's any issue, you err on the side of it being a public shade tree. But then that raises a question, well, if most of the public shade tree is on private property, then is the tree warden, is Mark, required to maintain it? And that seems to be an issue in terms of anti-aid and whatnot. So we're still trying to work that out. The biggest issue now at the top of Valley Road is, I think it's 10 Valley. With Mr. and Mrs. Dietrich, they are expecting an arborist to visit their place tomorrow to determine if their tree is sick or not. That's the immediate concern. The lesser concern is just clearly defining the duties and responsibilities of those folks at the top of the road there. So that's what we're doing now.
Okay.
Oh, and what you mentioned in the past, Mark, was someone planting trees within 20 feet of the property pursuant to appropriations made by the town. And although there's some guesswork, there's some hearsay that actually occurred back in 1920 or something, I haven't found anything definitively saying that has happened. So I think that really restricts.
I don't suspect you will either.
I don't think that's going to happen. So I think what really based on is determining to the best of our ability where the line is between the private and public property.
And when should that arborist have his or her report back?
That's a great question. I'll ask the Dietrichs. I'll send them an email tonight and let you know.
They're going out tomorrow.
Well, that was the date that was originally thrown out there. I'm not quite sure that has changed.
So, I mean, some of the difficulty there is, these trees far exceed the age of the sidewalk, so it's possible that a tree that is, looks like it's in the front yard and slightly touches the sidewalk, that may have been all sidewalk when the thing was planted or not, so it is tough to use the boundary lines as like the determining factor of whether they're town trees or private trees. The other side of it is you have the same trees, along the road, all the way down the road. They're all about the same height. They look like they're all the same age. You can imagine that the town had a role in that. But is there a record showing that the town had a role in that? So exactly. It's a tough one. And, it's not like we, the town, are trying to avoid maintaining or, these trees. It's that, we, by law, we can't spend town funds on private property. So we have to check that box before we, go down that road. So it's that's what we're trying to do in this process.
Okay. You have any comments on this topic before we move on, Tony?
No.
Yeah.
It looks like the arborist is confirmed for tomorrow at 10 o'clock on 10 Valley
Okay.
Road.
Okay, great.
I wonder if it's possible to get Mark Carboni to go at the same time and hear what the arborist has to say. I know that's his background.
I'll text him right now and see what he's up to tomorrow morning.
I believe Mark is also an arborist, a certified arborist.
Oh, for a long time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dan. Another hot topic here that I've been hearing a lot about and seeing a lot in social media is coyote activity. Certainly, we have coyotes in Nahant. You can't take a walk in Nahant without hearing a story about one and someone bumping into one. So, Tony, do you want to let people know what we're doing about this? And
Yeah. This was a hot topic about a decade ago. And it's obviously resurfaced. And at that time, the Board of Selectmen had Mass Wildlife come out to a public meeting here in town, and they talked a lot about, what the state regs are and, what the town can and can't do. Ultimately, the short story of it is, that these animals are more scared of you than you are of them. And for the most part, what Mass Wildlife tells us to do is, provides us guidelines as to how to avoid interaction with them, like keeping, food. If you have a pet, don't leave pet food out on your back porch or in your yard. Keep your barrels sealed, keep your animals inside. And then, what you can do when you do have an encounter with these animals, ways to kind of scare them off. And Dan did a number of, a lot of research on the regs, and I think has actually spoken with the state a couple of times, and I'll let Dan kind of talk about what he's gone through at this point.
Yeah, I've spoken to a bunch of folks from the state at Mass Wildlife and some other spots, and the fact is there's a hunting season for coyotes. Not that would benefit us at all, because no firearms can be discharged within town limits unless on your boat shooting at ducks. Other than that, you can't do that sort of thing. So it really comes down to whether the animal, the coyote, is really a threat, right? And just because it coexists does not make it a threat. So the state is the Mass Wildlife and Fisheries, who really regulates all this stuff, is not just going to allow anyone to go out there and exterminate a coyote just because it's there. So there are some limitations with regard to that. So there's no shooting of coyotes unless it's attacking a person. That's obvious, right? And that's a different story. But that, as far as I can tell, hasn't happened anytime recently, or that I've ever heard of, actually. And in terms of trapping, the regulations are very, very tight as to what kind of traps you can use. No snare traps, no claw traps, things like that. But if the animal is a problem, there is a unit within the state called the Problem Animal Control Unit. And they have certified and trained folks around the Commonwealth that will come and trap or try to trap, because apparently they're very hard to catch, a coyote, and then dispose of it from there. But again, there's got to be some sort of reason why that's happening. It's got to be doing some sort of damage to your property. What the state is preaching is education. You got to treat these guys like raccoons. You got to make sure your garbage is tight. Make sure, as Tony just mentioned, your dog food and pet food is secure. And also bird feeders are apparently a big thing as well. Not to mention, keeping the animals under control in terms of leash laws and keeping the cats indoors as much as possible. So there is that. We are trying to work with someone from Mass Wildlife and Fisheries to come, not really, well, virtually visit us and give us a presentation on coyotes and how to avoid interaction with them. We're working on that now, and I actually have a name, and I plan on touching base with her soon, and hopefully we can get her in and conduct a presentation to help educate folks.
And you had discussions with the state, Dan. Someone had mentioned to me that there may be a program where the state comes in and traps, and there's some neutering going on. We're sterilizing the coyote, releasing it. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not, Mark, but I can look into that specifically. In my conversation with them, they didn't mention that. They like they just mentioned education. You know, make noise, throw little rocks, and you know, most importantly, I haven't heard one story of a dog on a leash being attacked. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, the two things: we can't shoot them. We can't trap them and then bring them up to Lynn Woods.
No, that's highly forbidden.
So you know, we need to learn how to live with them the best we can in the safest way.
And if there's an immediate threat, that you call the police department like you would any other immediate threat.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you control the population? That seems to be one of the biggest concerns, is that they're multiplying.
Well, what the state, I imagine, I would bet is going to say it's all about making it habitable here for them. The less food they have, the less willingness they're going to have to stay or even populate, right? So if we make it less habitable here for them, they'll move on. One of the things the state preaches is, yeah, you can take 10 coyotes out of Nahant, but you know what? In a month, there'll be 10 more right back taking their spot. So it doesn't really do much to take one out because it's just going to be replaced. Now, that's not to say that a rabid or outwardly aggressive coyote shouldn't be cut. That's a different story. But in terms of just taking them out, the story is the same, that unless you're in the vineyard or Nantucket, because apparently there are no coyotes out there, they're just going to come back or be replaced by another one.
Yeah. They say they're territorial. How much space do they need? You know, one coyote. I mean, is it an acre, 2 acres, or?
Well, I tell you what, that's a question for the person that's going to give us that presentation. I can answer that.
I've been reading.
Not much.
Typically, they have a couple square miles per pair, but obviously they don't have that in the hunt. But you know, to the point Dan just made, they cover a lot of miles in a day, typically, and so it's all about food supply. If there's a food supply here, they're going to be here, and when the food supply dries up, they're going to move on. So I know there's a lot. We don't have any groundhogs we're battling anymore that we had for the last several years. So they're definitely controlling that issue.
There's a skunk in my backyard I wish I'd get.
I actually saw a coyote go through your yard yesterday, Mark, 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tony. And let us know if when that presentation can take place, and we'll let people know.
Okay.
You know, if anybody in town, you know, sees rabid behavior, or you know, there's an attack of some sort or a bite on a child or something like that, you know, got to report that right away. Call the police station, let us know. I think that would bring it to the level of a hazard, and then we could call in the state's unit for, you know, potential trapping. But you know, them just walking around in the middle of the day and being on the street. I see the Facebook comments, you know, coyote on X street at 2:30. You know, that's not a threat. So, you know, those aren't the things we're looking for. But if there's, you know, certainly, you know, we are not going to ignore any legitimate threats. So please report those if you witness anything like that.
And I know it can be unnerving, and it seems highly likely that some house cats have been eaten by coyotes. So you just gotta keep your pets inside or safe in some other manner. That is a real risk, I think, but.
Josh, a handheld air horn, one of those ones that like fit right in your hand, will go a long way to getting these coyotes frightened of people and moving on.
Yeah.
You see one of those things, you blow that air horn, that thing will take off. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, well, thanks again. Last item on the agenda is citizens forum. We have any?
Francine, I'm going to try to unmute you. There's a lot of comments on that coyote topic in the chat from Francine. I'm going to try to unmute you. If you'd like to, please announce your address, your name and address, and articulate the comments you put in the chat there.
Sure. Thanks for doing that. I think I'm not an expert, but I read a lot, and I certainly feel that we need to coexist. There's a lot of hysteria around the coyotes, and it really comes down to we need to educate ourselves and be smart. I own cats. They're indoor pets. And the coyotes do a lot for us. It's a healthy environment. They take the majority of their diets are rodents. And they have a family structure. There's an alpha male and an alpha female. They mate for life. They don't overpopulate. They reproduce based on food. And this is just everything I've read. So, they do a lot for us, and they have a right to be here too. And I think it's mutual respect and, I don't know. I'm not really prepared to start talking about it, but I appreciate what you all said. And I think we need to be smart and sensitive and take care of the wildlife we have here. It's wonderful that we have it. So I guess that's about it. I don't want to go on and on here.
No, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine.
Thank you.
Ken Angelo?
Sorry, I'm multitasking here with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Just asking what I had asked a little bit earlier when you all were talking about East Point. The appraisal that was released obviously contained a lot of good information. There was an appraisal, or at least some other ways of assessing the value that we referred to in the Selectmen's second statement that was sent out to everyone. I had asked via request via the town clerk to see the documentation regarding that appraisal or appraisals and whatever else went into those numbers. I know that's been in process. I'm just wondering if that will be made available in addition to what was just published.
So the actual appraisal is not a public document. It's protected under the public record exemption of being involved in the potential litigation of eminent domain. But they're in light of that, speaking on behalf of you, the chairman and the board felt it was important to provide as much information as possible short of the actual appraisal, and a summary as well as a kind of a resume or description of experience of the appraiser was provided by the board, and it's on nahant.org. Have you seen that?
I have actually. That's what I was referring to in terms of what's been published. So I had. That's also. I don't have it in front of me, but that is dated fairly recently, as I recall.
Yes.
So, at the time of the second statement, and prior, again, there were just, there were references made to consulting with professionals and with appraisals, et cetera. And that's actually what I was trying to get some more information on so that people could understand what exactly was behind it.
I think, Ken, you're probably referring to the first appraisal. Well, it actually wasn't an appraisal, Tony. It was done before I was on the board here, but I don't believe there was ever a final appraisal made initially, was there?
No, I don't believe so. There was more of a, I don't know,
An opinion.
comparison study of some sort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the selectmen's second statement, the word appraisal is not used. I forget how it's phrased exactly, but opinion or assessment, something like that. That was the first one that was done quite a while ago. Yeah, I assume that's what Ken is referring to.
Yeah. I mean, the actual language that I think I used in the request was any documents, opinions, appraisals, whatever. It was, basically whatever you guys looked at, and were using to substantiate what was in the second statement. That's what I was looking for. Appraisal was, if it didn't take the form of an appraisal, then that's fine. But whatever it was, that's what I was seeking.
I think we'll have to discuss with council what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to release. But
Ken, you received our response to that FOIA request, right?
I did, and actually there's I did. I responded to it, and I actually just pinged a few days ago asking what the status was. So we can take, Tom, we can take it offline via email if you want to pursue it further. I guess I would just say, to the selectmen and to Dan, the second statement, as well as other public statements, basically makes the case for doing what y'all want to do and puts these numbers out there for the public. There's, whatever there is to substantiate that, which are already, the numbers are already out there. The numbers were put out and essentially signed by the Board of Selectmen. So it just strikes me as saying that we can't tell you how we got there because it's in litigation doesn't really make sense if the numbers are already publicly out there. At this point, I know people want to go. I can take this up with you via email and we can follow up in a future meeting. But I just want to get that out there.
Okay. All right, guys. It's been a long meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Do I? Just before, I know you want to adjourn. I just did want to just say that the streetlight project.
Oh yes, I missed that. I'm sorry. Yep, I'm sorry.
So we're probably halfway through, maybe 2/3 of the way through of installing the new LED streetlights. We've received a number of positive feedback and negative feedback. I would say it's probably 50-50, although, the negative feedback is, personal. It's a lot of it is, the light is shining into my house and, into my bedroom and that type of thing. And obviously that's a larger impact than, the positive feedback. A lot of the positive feedback we got was, I like how it, we never had a street light. Street light's been out for years. We can finally see the street there's been a lot of, this summer we've experienced a ton of police related activity in town, whether it was, ditched cars or thefts or arrests or chases or whatever. Breaking and enterings, we had it all this summer. So, a lot of positive comments, especially from, those on main roads or the police department or other residents are, I like the lights. They're lighting up the neighborhood, makes it feel more safe. I'll say that the wattage is exactly the same. We did choose the warmest dark sky compliant LED option that we had. But you compare the old lights, I mean, every single, like 95% of the old lights that we took down were either out on their last leg, had a nest in them, had water in them, had wire defects. I mean, they were really old and battered. So, going from that to a brand new LED light is obviously a drastic change. We are already exploring. We actually ended up coming in under budget on this project, so we have a little extra funds from grant money and borrowing. So we're already looking into shields for some of the lights that are more in, maybe off of Nahant Road and more in the residential areas. And all these lights are control ready. It is a significant cost to add controls to the streetlights, but that would allow us to basically control the streetlights almost like a thermostat, where we could dim the lights at certain times in certain areas. And so that's something, we are exploring those options.
Could you do that collectively, Tony? I mean, do you have to, retrofit everything, or can you just, the lights that we know are becoming a problem, do we address those first?
I think I'll look into it, but I think the controls, you can set them up like strands of areas. It doesn't have to be a control on every single light. So, you have one control that is for the entire Nahant Road, one for all of Willow Road, and then you have one for the neighborhoods in between the two. And you can set those zones up differently. So, I think we're going to explore, what the options are and what the cost of that is. But we did purchase the product that, is ready for them if we want to go down that path. That would obviously take longer to implement. And but as far as like the shields go, which is basically just a rim that more so directs the lights downward. The other issue we're having is our poles aren't perfectly 90 degrees. So when you have a pole that's leaning a little bit backwards, the light tends to not be as directly downward. So those shields will help in that. And that's something that we might be able to do while we have the current company under contract installing the new lights. So we're already, looking into it.
Yeah. I think I referred to it today that I think it's a great effort that we're taking here. I think we're finding out that, like I said, I think one shoe doesn't fit all here. So I think we have to make some adjustments accordingly at some point. I know, Josh, how do you like the one across from your house?
The one that's on your corner is okay. I will say the one that's on Ocean Street,
It's not okay.
super bright.
Yeah.
Lights up the neighbor's fence like a movie screen. But I think the shielding. I think the shielding actually, Tony, will go a long way.
I do too.
In tight neighborhoods and so on. I think that will help a lot.
I think you're right, Josh.
Yeah, like I said, all these lights are the lights that we had were so bad. And for the most part, like you're not really putting up halogen or whatever the type of light that we had before. They're not really installing those anymore. So we kind of would have got to this point anyways, but I completely understand, not wanting a bright light shine in your window in the middle of the night. So we're going to try to adjust, as you said, because it doesn't, one shoe doesn't, whatever the saying, not one size fits all.
Yeah. It's I mean,
It's late, Tony. We've been at this a long time.
you'll do your best, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's personal preferences involved here, right? So what I like for streetlights is not the same as my wife likes. So one of us is going to be less happy than another. So it's, we're going to do the best we can, but it's, can't make it ideal for every single person.
Suzanne Macarelli asked in the chat group, what's the timeline for shielding and or dimming? So, like I said, the shielding option is something that would be more short term. And the current contractor is about halfway through. They're probably gonna be here for another week or two. And we've already encountered some poles that are missing an arm. So we already are, talking to them about getting those types of materials in and to kind of go through like the punch list items at the end of the contract. And one thing we're adding into that is the shields. So we haven't gotten an answer yet. I don't want to commit to, that it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, but we're exploring it so that's going to be our quickest adjustment option. So we're exploring it, and hopefully it's something we can, purchase and include in this contract and thus be done, over the next couple of weeks.
If those shields are available, Tony, we know one or two places where we've got some significant complaints, and rightfully so. And it's a good test of whether the shields are working or not. If we can just get them over there in the next week or so to put a shield up to see how well it works, without committing to the whole town, but let's do a test.
Yeah, I asked Zach to talk to the contractor about getting 50 or so of them. I think we have like 200 lights in town. So I asked to see, if we bought them in, groups of 50, like what's the price range on it? And the other thing is being able to get them. I don't think they're manufactured locally. So it was quite the process getting the Cobra heads here, but maybe the shields are quicker. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We're looking into it immediately anyways.
Great. Any comments on this? Any other?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. I have a motion. Muted. Someone's muted.
I move that the Board of Selectmen adjourn.
Wait a second. I think Gene left us. I'll second that. All those in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. All right, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Dan.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, my God.